do it every Wednesday from 12 p.m. EST, just like last Wednesday. And we hope that next Wednesday we will also see you. We always like to interact. So if you are on Facebook or YouTube, if you can join the Zoom link, that would be awesome. We have a speaker today who would love to interact more because of her topic. Her topic is quite unique, saying the breaking the gender bias glass ceiling, which is gender-based disparity is as old as the concept of gender itself. But that does not mean that we can't break through those shackles in the workplace. So she is a sociologist. So with that specialization in gender studies, I would like to, I mean, she would like to highlight how to look at the same outside the binary spectrum. So that is her topic. It's unique. It's very, I would say, the way, while we were discussing, the way she said that she's going to bring it out, I think that's where the uniqueness comes in. And she is none other than Swapan Kaur. She's from Chandigarh. She had a family incident happen just few days back. But you know what? This is what I like about speakers when they keep their word. And she had to travel, but she is here with 72 hours of electricity gone in Chandigarh, but she managed to come in and do this webinar for us. She is a sociologist who is presently employed as an assistant professor in Chandigarh. She has previously worked with a number of mental health organizations and run a social enterprise called Tattva Connect LLP as its co-founder. It is focused on mental health awareness, advocacy, and application. She's also the managing editor of a legal journal consequent to having worked in the space of gender sensitization and advocacy. So her name, the social enterprise Tattva Connect. Why the name Tattva Connect? She was explaining before we started the ZIPINAR. It's very interesting as I was hearing the last bit. So if you can touch upon that as well, it would be nice. But absolute honor to have you, Swapan. Over to you.
Thank you, Julia, for such a warm and such a sweet introduction. I I am so glad to be here, and thank you for giving me this space and considering my candidature worthy for this. Hello, everyone. A very warm hi, good evening from India, because around here it's around 10:30 p.m. And but I couldn't have been more glad to be a part of this. I am wide awake with a few cups of coffee because I believe the topic that I'm talking about today, it is equally potent as a cup of espresso. But at the same time, obviously not everyone's cup of tea, if I may say. So, like Jhulan said, yes, I do run a social enterprise by the name of Tattva Connect. Uh, for a lot of you, the word tattva might be new because it comes from a Hindi word with the meaning of the same is an element. So before I move on to the glass ceiling, I would just like to elaborate a little upon what Tattva Connect means and why I believe studying social structures, talking about mental health, talking about wellness, talking about our prejudices, biases, all of it is under this one umbrella that falls under the notion of just being kind to each other at the end of the day, in whatever realm it is. Although today's topic has more to do with the occupational structure of the way we see the world, but Tattva is an element. When I talk about the elements of your well being, it is not just your mental health, it is not just your physical health. There are other elements like your social health, your occupational health, then there is your familial health, there is your sexual health. So, a lot of components, when they are in coherence, when there's a balance, it is then that you're able to function properly. But if there is some sort of discord, then there is this disconnect. I mean, you might be feeling low and it might affect the way you woke up, the way you wanted to talk to someone, the way what you ate. So even if one of those elements is out of its place, it affects the rest of the other elements in your well-being. So that at Tattva Connect we try to help you find that balance to connect within and, you know, establish and augment the odds of being more holistically well in terms of your mind, body, and soul paradigm. Now, coming back to my topic for today, I I would request everyone in the who are attending to please bear with me, and I would like to make this as interactive as possible. So the first thing is that when I say the glass ceiling effect, the first point is, what is it? I mean, there is a glass, there's a ceiling, but where is it? The whole point is that glass ceiling is something, it's an obstacle that might not be visible to all. It is an obstacle that might not even be recognized, but that does not mean that it does not exist. So, where does this exist? Primarily, the glass ceiling effect has always been about genders. In our audience, if someone could just let me know if they know the difference between gender and sex. As a sociologist, this is one of the first things that we learn. So, when I say the difference between gender and sex, gender is something that you associate with, sex is related to your genitals. Gender is something, which is why the word transgenders, because these people, they might, as society sees it, they were born with a certain sex that was used to define their gender, but later on in their lives, or whenever it happened, they realized that their affinity and their affiliation is towards the other end of the spectrum. So the glass ceiling effect, usually when we talk about it, it's an extension of feminism. Females not being given equal opportunities in the corporate structure because femininity is considered as, not that occupationally strong a strength. Now this again finds its roots in the division of labor structure. When I say division of labor, think of it as, just go back to the cavemen. When you go back to that era, what the only occupational structure that we might see is hunting or farming, and men were the ones who were primarily involved in it because it was something that required more physical strength. So the division of labor was primarily on the basis of gender, where the females were supposed to be just the women running their houses. So this meant that there were two kinds of occupations: running the house and fetching food, fetching a livelihood. The longer we went into the structure of the society, the more we looked into it, we realized that farming, hunting would be used for the barter, which means in exchange for another good, you would either sell your wheat, right, paddy, or the meat that you had hunted, sorry. So there was some value to what the men were doing, but who would pay a woman to just raise her child? I mean, that is seen as a duty. It is not seen as something that can fetch monetary value or can be exchanged for something. So as we move forward, the domestic chores that we see today, they became more or less invaluable, as in there was nothing to barter them for, there was nothing to exchange that value for. Whereas the occupations of men, they came at a price. So the idea that the manlier, as I would put it in quotes, the manlier a job, the more value it had. Fast forward it into the contemporary world. As you know, there is no lack of biases. We still look at our society through the binary, a lens. Either it is a man or it is a woman, which is why the glass ceiling effect talks about the obstacles that women might have to face when trying to rise above in the corporate sector, especially in the C-suite positions. The sad part is when I googled what is the latest statistic of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, the women ranked at just 8.2%. But what was sadder was when I looked for it, the percentage of trans people who were the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, or people from the community, from the pride community, LGBTQI community, it said 0.02% on the third page. Usually you find these statistics on the first page itself. But the fact that there's hardly any studies that actually can find a definite figure about the number of people who have reached that position outside the binary realm. Now, that is the thing that is surprising. So, obviously, as an extension of feminism, we talk about the fact that women aren't given equal opportunities. But when we talk about that glass ceiling, my question is, who is talking about the trans people? Even a bigger I would say criticism of feminism is that feminism does not include trans women. We say that trans women are trans women, they're not women. So when we see such biases in a society, such prejudices, obviously we might not actively practice them, but somewhere down the line, they are definitely going to affect the way we think, the way we work. And tomorrow, let's just say I would introduce myself as a cis het woman, and I would still not fall in that huge a minority community as someone who is a trans woman or someone with a different sexual orientation. The problem has never been about having these orientations. The problem with the society has always been the expression of these associations and sexualities. So, in terms of the glass ceiling effect outside the binary realm of being a man or a woman, the problem is that we do not even recognize it. We do not talk about it. We do not have narratives of those struggles. So, in order to combat something, the first thing has to be to recognize it. Someone might ask me, Swapan, why would I want to recognize it? I mean, these people are getting jobs. These people are, I mean, thriving in the workspace. Look at how many diversity hirings we've got. But I have just one question. You might bring in a lot of people on board, but does diversity mean inclusion? Tomorrow, in a room full of people, I can have 50 people of different ethnicities, of different sexualities, of different gender affiliations. But if I do not see them as equals, will they all be able to break the barriers of being a minority and move on to being treated equally? So the narrative here that need to build is that yes, diversity is important. Diversity is the first step towards raising these people from unemployment, from being marginalized. But at the same time, diversity cannot exist without inclusion. Without inclusion, it is just a word. So it is just like collecting people together where there is no recognition of individuality. Once the individuality is recognized, the next step comes being about being able to accept it, and lastly being able to celebrate it. We, even in the contemporary world where we are well read, where we've almost crossed the fourth wave of feminism, and where we have countries finally legalizing same-sex marriages, legalizing the rights of trans people, but at the same time, the country that I come from, the diaspora is so bad that on paper, in our legislature, we do have those rights. But if you look at how well those rights are being implemented, how well those are being executed, you'll be surprised to see that the gap is mind boggling. So, in the corporate sector, when I say that we need to look at this, I would simply ask you one thing. How many of you know someone who's non binary or is a trans man or a woman who is in a senior, if not even a CXO position, then a senior managerial position? Entry level jobs are not hard. The obstacles that come our way are when we try sorry when we try to climb the vocational ladder. So that obstacle, because again, it is not apparent to a lot of people. Even if it is visible, they will refuse to acknowledge it because their prejudice is so high that they believe that equality lies in the fact that you just give them an opportunity. Equality is not just about giving opportunity, it is also about reducing the barriers that they might have to cross. As a woman, let's just say I have the same opportunity as the man next to me to get a job. I have the same qualification, but the social barriers that come with it. Maybe tomorrow might be asked to leave my job because I have a family. That would never be expected out of a man. Or there might be a certain job that an XYZ person might not be able to enroll for because maybe they're a trans person. Or maybe they are exhibiting their sexuality in a place where it is not accepted. So the point is that ascendance, that ability to rise above just entry level jobs and find an identity, be celebrated for their identity, being accepted for their identity. Now, those are the modern definitions of the glass ceiling effect. The last one that we had was somewhere in the 1970s, which is why it only talked about women and primarily women of color. But the more you look into the nitty gritty of it, multiple folds of marginalization is more common today than ever before Because on the one hand, we believe in multiculturalism, but on the other, our prejudice for the and our pride in our culture being superior to others hinders our ability to create equitable outcomes. So, when I talk about the glass ceiling effect, and it is not just in the professional realm, I mean, there are so many opportunities, educational opportunities, or as you might see in India very recently, very sadly, there was an incident where young girls who were simply practicing their right of wearing a hijab, something that is close to them, it is a part of their religious clothing, and it is not like it is being forced on them. Yet you take away that right. Why? Because you believe that it might be an obstacle that you've created, they might be creating for themselves, where it is not the case. So when I see all of this, and when we talk about such inequalities, how they translate into workplace things. I mean, even something as simple as being able to cross dress in a workplace. I mean, it is unheard of for most people. Most corporates would not tolerate an individual being able to express their identity in terms of clothing, because again, in quotes, it might hurt the corporate culture. You ought to be prim proper. I agree with prim and proper. There's nothing wrong with prim and proper. But let people be what they want to be. Let them breathe. At the end of the day, I think it is the reason why we have such biases, or the reason why, today I, as a woman, might not be seen as competent as a man in terms of having a managerial ability. Or let's just say there is a trans woman who, again, she is a woman, but there was a point of time when she was considered a man by the society. After becoming a woman, there are different sorts of marginalization. There are different sorts of obstacles that she might have to face. The reason for that is our prejudice. So when I talk about breaking the glass ceiling, the first point is recognizing it. The second point is advocacy. After awareness comes advocacy and talking about it to the people around you. Whenever you see some sort of marginalization happening or in the workplace, talk it out. The person who might be facing that sort of oppression might not be able to talk about it because they already are from a minority, and we do not empower our minority to acknowledge that your voice and be the advocate for it. Because silence has never helped the person who was oppressed. Silence has always helped the oppressor. So, and again, because in the corporate structure, it being so complex that usually, since it is the sole way to earn your bread, it might be difficult to deal with. But then again, there is no better way to do it than to do it today. No better way to talk about it than to simply point out and say, no, this is not done. This is not how you can treat a person. And your personal prejudices cannot be allowed to decide the career or the future of a person. Talk about capacity, talk about capability, talk about academic rigor. Because at the end of the day, what should define people are their achieved statuses instead of their ascribed statuses. As a sociologist, when I say an achieved or an ascribed status, an achieved status is something that was in my hands. I could choose to make my career, I could choose my level of education, I could choose who I associate with, I could choose what I want to become. But my ascribed characteristics, being from a Sikh family, being an Indian by birth, being of a certain caste, being a woman, whether I associate with it or not is a different thing, but my sex is that of a woman. So these were the things that were never in my hand. So why judge someone for that? Even race, ethnicity, all of that falls under that umbrella. So when we talk about the modern concept of glass ceiling, we talk about quashing these prejudices. We talk about being non judgmental and looking a person based on their accomplishments, not on the basis of their race, caste, creed, gender, economic status. So again, like I said, for the first thing is awareness, the thing is advocacy, and lastly, the third vertical is application. The application part comes into being. The best, I think, way to explain it is, let's just say I'm an individual. I go out there, I talk about this. I'm part of seminars, part of spreading the word on ground, I'm part of these organizations that talk about empowering people for who they are, celebrating individuality. Then there's the awareness part. I know that this needs to be done. Last is the application. I'm talking about it. I am spreading the word about it, but do I actually believe in it? Or are my prejudices something that also make a bigger part of my being? And a prejudice, mind you, cannot just be about maybe a gender or a caste or a race or an ethnicity. Prejudices come in a lot of forms. My understanding of a prejudice is when it is unwarranted, when it is baseless, but you choose to judge a person on the basis of that, because that is because of your upbringing or a certain experience, but that does not define the other person. It defines you. So when you choose to restrict the possibilities of a person because of your own prejudice, whatever the reason for that might be, that is when again you create a glass barrier for that person. You could be in I would say, position of power, and you do that for someone, or because your affinity towards an XYZ person is more. So because of your personal feelings being involved, you create another glass barrier. So the point is that at the end of the day, again, I would not say that everyone is equally aware of themselves. As we learn about self, we move forward. My journey towards this learning about the glass ceiling, again, it happened, it took 25 years. I was 25 doing my master's when I realized that, okay, this is something that exists. And it was not like I was oblivious to it. I knew women had to struggle, but I only thought that it was just me. Fact. Did I educate myself, mind you? After that, I took the onus of educating myself, learning about the struggles of others, learning about how many obstacles and how different their obstacles might be. And if I were to give you a stark opposite of the example of the glass ceiling, you might ask me, like, okay, you know what, glass ceiling, if you keep on saying it's about women and minorities, where are the men? I would give you a stereotype as an example. Often you might have heard that being a nurse is a woman's job. So when a man enters that realm, again, he might face marginalization. So, no, there is no person or no gender or no sexuality or no race or no ethnicity that is oblivious to this, or sorry, is or it does not affect them. There are different kinds of marginalizations, different kinds of glass ceilings set up by the society that create a hindrance for us to move forward. As an individual, whether it's in the corporate sector, whether it is in your personal life, the best you can do is to not create that glass ceiling for another person. Because again, there might be some that are visible, but there might be some that are not visible to others. To quash those that are not visible is the toughest part. On a personal level, if you ask me, Sopan, how do I break the glass ceiling? Firstly, again, recognize that it is there. Recognize the barriers that might be there, not because of your own, I would say, lack of ability, but because there's an external pressure out there. Denying it is something that I've seen a lot in the domestic sphere. Like a lot of women just simply giving up because this does not happen, or you know what, I cannot break the glass ceiling, or my company's got not going to give me that huge a hike because there's a man in my comparison standing for the same position out there, not realizing that, okay, this is something that is perennial, this is not something that exists only with you, it is something that is equally pertinent. But then just giving up right there and then, I understand how hard it can be. I was from a male dominated field. I mean, we all know STEM field is notorious for being male dominated. But at the end of the day, carving your niche, as as it is, I believe it is equally important because you're not doing that for yourself alone. You're doing that for a lot of other people who are seeing that, okay, tomorrow, if there is one Swapan who can build a career out of a subject like sociology, that is something that is considered to be non-existent in India. Although social sciences are picking up their pace in the foreign countries, in India we believe that these subjects are primarily losing their girth. So when let's just say a Swapan tries to make a career in this field by battling all of those things, there are 100 other Swapans who are still thinking but might give up on a dream because they think it's not possible. So breaking the glass ceiling, you're not doing that just for yourself. You're doing that so that there are other people who have been marginalized. They first of all recognize what that marginalization looks like. Then they see that, oh, it is a harbinger of hope. They realize that, okay, this can be changed. Although it might be a one hell of a tough journey, but it can be changed. So again, creating that ripple of positive impact. Now that is the reason why you need to do this. It is bigger than just you and me. Prejudices are bigger than just you and me. I mean, we've seen it on a global scale, which is why even one person talking about it, you might never know, the amount of change that might bring. And imagine if a 16-year-old Greta Thunberg could just wake us up to the cause of climate change. You could be the next one. You talk about the glass ceiling, you talk about quashing it. Be active, be bold. What is the worst that can happen? I mean, you just have what, 70 to 80 years? So, voice your opinion. It is hard. I mean, it might come at a huge cost too. But at the end of the day, you'll be leaving something behind for others to look up to. You'll be making it a better place for others, even though it might have been a struggle for you. But that is how change happens. And the glass ceiling is something that we really need to look into, quash it, break it, and create a world that is more equitable, more inclusive, more accepting. At the end of the day, individuality is the one thing that sets us apart, and yet is the one thing that brings us the closest to others because we find the commonalities. But just because we can't find a commonality or we are prejudiced towards something else, that does not make them inferior or superior. So, in the end, when I say that the glass ceiling effect is prevalent, it might be invisible, but it is only invisible to those who choose to be in denial of it. It is not something that can I can proactively point out and say that, okay, after this position I'm going to face the glass ceiling effect. And it is multifold. It is not just in the corporate realm, it is not just about the economic status as well where you belong to, who you associate with, because the world is always going to have prejudices. So the least that you can do, you cannot change all the prejudices of the world, but you can start with yourself. So the best you can do is not create a glass ceiling for someone else. And I think once we all start proactively working towards that, will we be able to quash all the glass ceilings in the world. So if there's anything that the audience might want to ask me, or if there is anything that you would like me to elaborate upon, please, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Swapan. That's really a topic that not everyone is talking every day, and it's really good to hear those things because it'll make you realize that there's really that unconscious bias or barrier among genders because sex is binary, right? So for those who'd like to interact, ask questions, or share their insights, please do so. You can unmute yourself, or you can just raise your hands to recognize.
Hello, this is Sheetal. That was an excellent, eloquent, and very powerful talk that I've heard, and I want to congratulate you on that.
Hi, Sheetal. Thank you for such kind words. Thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for listening to me for half an hour. And I'm so glad that you found it to be something insightful.
It is, and also it felt like you were on the top of the train. It was flowing, and when people speak, we've heard other experts talk, but there's a difference when your passion, when your hobby, when your career and your vision is all together. I could tell. So thank you so much for that. And a couple of things that I was thinking when you were talking about is that one thing is that as women, we may not even be aware that there is a glass ceiling, how conditioned we are. And the other thing is that we may not be realizing the glass ceiling we're putting on others. So it's like it's an enlightening era for all of us individually, as well as for us to see how we are helping or preventing others from growing because of that existing cultural conditions or gender expectations, role expectations. And even inside family, forget about corporate, inside your own family, this exists, and it's very good. And one of the things I was thinking was, how do we bring this awareness? Like corporates are doing it at their level, and then I know that in schools they're doing a lot of diversity, a lot of inclusion, a lot of mind broadening activities. But what about rest of the people? What about the regular people? Like how do we address to them, because they are not exposed to either educational or career exposures, and there are many people that are in that category.
I think that's an excellent question, Sheetal, and I wanted to stress upon that. Thank you for reminding me, first of all. Yes, see, there are two ways that this can happen. First is the trickle down theory. The cream or the educated people, they learn about it, they sensitize themselves about it, and then they take the onus of spreading this information on the ground. There are like a million NGOs out there working towards it. And the point is that today, if I have this knowledge, if I have this understanding, and I recognize something that, okay, this is wrong in a certain section of the society. Let's just say India's population, 70% of it is not residing in the urban areas. And the literacy rate, and the very basic literacy rate, I would say, the people who can just write or read in any language is somewhere around 60%. So if I draw that Venn diagram, still somewhere around 35% of the people have no idea what is going on, and their barriers is something that no one could tell them about, because again, their struggles are very different from ours. But I think that is where one of the things that about sociologists, and why sociology should not be a dying subject, is because it looks at these things through a non-judgmental lens. We look at things, we call a spade, and we recognize these things and we say, okay, this is what is happening. After that comes the part of, after having recognized it, comes the part of, building policies, talking about it, going on ground. I personally can tell you something that I do on a regular basis. I am usually a career mentor for a lot of students from rural backgrounds. The point is to increase the odds of their employability. We create career roadmaps depending on their own capabilities. And when you're discussing a career roadmap with maybe 12 to 14-year-old, and you're trying to show them the possibilities of the world, that is when you make them realize that, okay, the world is not just what surrounds them. There is so much more to learn. The part of learning and unlearning. First, I learn about it myself, then I talk to other people around me. I know it can be especially tough in families, like you mentioned, that families can be especially sexist. Especially in India, like a patriarchal country, or there are other third world countries where the things are even worse. So during the only way to reach out to these people is to talk and talk about it more, not just in your friend circles, not just through high end conferences, not just through writing research papers, but by creating a dialogue that these people might understand. So if I, let's just say, were to go to a semi urban area and I was to talk to them about it, I would not simply start by talking about the barriers. I would start with a conversation where I ask them, okay, what do you think is the hindrance in your life? Or what do you think, what this looks like? Do you realize that there is another person who might not have the same problems as you, but the problems are existent? So when we talk about all of this, I think at the end of the day, it's a dialogue, and this is the way that you present that dialogue that comes into being. And the best I think that we can do is through philanthropy is to reach out to as many people as we can. I hope I was able to answer your question, Sheetal.
Yes, I completely agree that the dialogue's opening up, and then you make it their centered by asking them the questions. I just was like thinking the dialogues also like among friends or among acquaintances. Unless you have a certificate or somehow they see you as someone with authority on that subject, as a subject matter expert, the dialogues could become arguments, because adults are not waiting to be taught. Adults already know everything. So
I
workshops in a public space, in a more interactive, but in a more like a group, like a group dialogue, because there they also don't want to argue, but at the same time they're also in a learning space because others are talking, and we are a herd community, right? So if we see powerful people like you and others interact but in a group meeting, it starts as a friend meeting, but I mean as in like a casual meeting, but I feel like these kind of dialogues may not be one-on-one unless it's an expert talking to someone who's willing to learn. I don't know, what do you think about that?
I'll tell you, you're spot on. I'll be honest, when it comes to families, I still struggle with my family when I talk to them about women being open about their sexuality, something as simple as that. Or women being able to date other women. I mean, it's still a taboo here, mind you. So when I talk about that, or how, as tomorrow, if I get married, I would not want to leave my job because I've worked so hard to build a career for myself. Yes, family is important to me, but how is me giving up a job a measuring rod for how good a mother I might be? So that is the thing. Again, if I go up to my parents and I bombard them with these questions, they're simply going to say that Swapan's gone berserk. They're simply going to say that, okay, this is the weird modern thinking, whatever it is. So instead of doing that, I would start the dialogue with something that they're more familiar with. Like this, just say the class-based differentiation, the differentiation on the basis of economic structures. So you go up to them, you say that, okay, you realize that people from the suburbs or people who have lower education levels, life is harder for them. They'll be like, yeah, of course it is harder. They should learn and they should do everything. So you start the dialogue with, but again, the opportunities are less. And it's not like they're choosing lesser opportunities. They got opportunity. The lesser opportunities was as a result of being from a lower socioeconomic background. You build that dialogue. And this is not a one conversation thing. Trust me, I've been trying to do this conversation for over 8 years. And I have come a bit far, obviously, but it is a conversation that you have daily. And let me give you another insight. The world will say that, if a man is talking about it, he's assertive. If a woman is talking about something like this, she is too outspoken. And imagine the marginalization that might come with someone being of a minority even lower than women. So the thing is that there are certain narratives, but the only way to do this is to be bold, is to not mince your words, but find a way that the other person might, first of all, recognize what it is that you're trying to say, and secondly, be empathetic. Now, the point is that you and I are educated women, you are, and I am contemporary women. We understand these things. But to think that the person in front of us, did they have the same conditioning? Did they have the same rearing? Were they, presented with the same level of education? Did they get the time to think about these things? Like if I go up to, let's just say, someone who is struggling to put 2 meals on their table a day, and I say that, you know what, for people who belong to different genders or sexualities, there's a glass ceiling in the corporate world, they'll simply look at me that, I have bigger problems in life. So the first point is to recognize what language they understand, what language they understand, and then talk to them. I mean, perseverant. Don't be because their conditioning is very different from ours, and the parents especially. I mean, they are 20, 30 years ahead of us, and they've had their share of struggles, they've had their share of prejudices, have had their share of, I would say, obstacles that they had to overcome. But also start this dialogue that just because you overcame an obstacle does not mean that the other person has to as well in order to reach that position. The point is to reduce the obstacles in order to increase efficiency. So if you can create that dialogue, again, it takes time and it takes a colossal amount of energy. But I hope you do not give up and keep being that bold voice. Again, if you keep I would say, if we talk about the glass ceiling, if you keep bashing your hand against that ceiling, might take years. It is going to hurt a lot because you're trying to, increase your strength, but your endurance would increase. And at the end of the day, there will come that one point when that glass ceiling will break. You will bleed. It will be hurtful, but you will also be able to break that glass ceiling. So I know it's a tough road ahead, but I hope that you find the strength, all of you, in you to break that glass ceiling for yourself and for others.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. And I love the empathy factor you're talking about, as well as the philosophical point where you said we're all here for a short time. Like, why not speak up and help others? So thank you so much.
And thank you for hearing me out, and thank you for bringing something that I should have added earlier, but I forgot. So thank you.
Yeah, great session, Swapan. So I think you really enlightened with so many things that I'm not even aware and not even considering. Thank you for that. And then, do you want to talk more also about? I mean, there are no questions from others on the Tattva Connect and what exactly what more detail what you are doing with the organization, Tattva Connect.
Happy to do that, Srini. Thank you for asking me. Because Tattva Connect is a brainchild. It's very close to my heart. And again, one of the other contemporary problems that, again, I could call it a glass ceiling, actually, very closely related, because that is of a staggering mental health. I mean, I randomly read that there were around 4 million people in the States in the last 1 year who've dropped out of their jobs in the pandemic, when all of us were struggling with finances. But what was so bad that made them want to put their finances aside and made me think that, okay, you know what, I've had enough. It was the firstly the bad work culture, obviously, the no work life balance. But when you look at it more closely, you realize that the balance that we call, it's actually a part of your well-being. It includes the mind, body, and soul paradigm. Usually when we talk about mental health, then we simply restrict it to a very certain section. First of all, a lot of people believe that mental health has something to do with when it is deteriorating, especially that oh, you need therapy, which means you're in a bad shape. That is not the case. And these are the some teeny tiny things that we at Tattva Connect are trying to raise awareness about, that mental health is something that is as much a part of us as a physical health. I mean, when you talk about physical health, people do not immediately assume that it is bad. But when I say the word mental health, people immediately assume, oh, something is wrong with this person, or maybe they're depressed, or maybe they have anxiety. Now, depressed and anxiety have they're two very potent words. Depression is not something that happens every day. So the point is that today we've started trivializing it all because there is so much going on. I mean, I have the pressure of going to college, being an entrepreneur. I want to do so much in terms of philanthropy, but can I? The point is that you need to find that balance, and after that part, you are also expected to have a social life and to have vacations in order to rejuvenate. But my simple question is, how many people actually are able to rejuvenate in their vacations instead of planning the other vacation before this vacation has even ended, or planning their schedule when they get back? This is what I have to do, this is what I have to do, this work is pending. Oh, okay, I've done a vacation, but my boss called. It is all over the place, and the pandemic just made it worse. So Tattva Connect was actually established in the pandemic. We're just 1 year old, and we just begun pushing out the agenda that take care of yourself, take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, take care of your well-being, take care of your wellness. No one else is going to do that for you. And just like I think a lot of us do visit the dentist very regularly, because that is the one doctor that I do very visit very regularly. So think of therapy as a checkup for your overall well-being. There has to be nothing wrong with you. And even if there is, the point is that going to a dentist and having a cavity is sadly not sorry is not stigmatized, but sadly going to seek a therapist because I need someone to help me regain that balance is seen as a weakness. Like tomorrow, if I god forbid, if I or someone I love, they develop cancer cells in their body, no one is going to come up to me and shame me for having developed cancer. No one is going to come up to me and say that, oh, your body cells were not strong enough to fight these cells. Oh my god, how did they give up instead of fighting cancer cells? Oh, it's just in your head, it's not cancer is not there in your body. But when I talk about mental health, we have all these prejudices. We say that, okay, no, the resilience of a person is calculated by the level through which they can combat certain things, their lows. We celebrate the fact that it's okay to exhibit your emotions, but when people actually do that, they're labeled as weak. So So that sort of dichotomous behavior, that sort of duality, leads to a point where a person around them what they're actually feeling. So Tattva Connect at the end of the day is also a safe space. We want people to be able to say how they're feeling without being judged, without being made to feel weaker or lesser for actually just being allowed to break down. I mean, after at the end of the day, you are human. Emotions cannot be a straight line. Emotions cannot be a linear ascendance. Emotions are some things that fluctuate, and the more we avoid that topic, the more it becomes toxic for us to realize, when that point where we reach that, okay, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, there's a point when you're going to break. So in order that for you to not reach that point where the damage is so much that correcting it is going to take years and years, we try and talk about wellness and well-being in teeny tiny steps. Something as simple as, let's just say, not using your phone in the morning. It is a gadget that is attached to the hip, I swear. And sadly, there was a point of time when even I was guilty of looking at my Instagram the moment I woke up. But lately, I realized that that constant need for being relevant, again, it can be very, very taxing. It can make you feel inferior because everyone's life is happy on social media. So in these times, and also I see that a lot of people confuse sadness with depression. So at Tattva Connect, what we're trying to do is, of course, we connect you with the right individual, with the right therapist or healer, in terms of helping you become a better version of yourself. But that is not what it is restricted to, which is why we have different verticals. I mean, there's yoga, there is spiritual healing, there is therapy, there is hypnotherapy, there is counseling, there is guidance, there are life coaches, because the needs of every individual are different. Like tomorrow, if my teeth need just some whitening, or another person's teeth needs a root canal, are we judging them for getting those two things done? But then why are we judging someone if they go for a life coach because they need support? I mean, at the end of the day, as a community, shouldn't we be doing that? Also, another very important vertical of Tattva Connect is suicide awareness. Again, because the stigmatization that comes with it is, we tell the people that, that person killed themselves because they gave up, or they were weak, or they could not, they weren't resilient enough. Whereas we never question the fact that, okay, if that person broke down to a level where they thought that giving up is easier than having to endure another day, how could a person be made to feel so against the idea of living that they thought that this was better? So we do not take the onus of the fact that there are other factors instead of just a personal or a psychological one when it comes to suicide. There are so many other factors involved. There's social, there's occupational, like I said, then there's familial, relationship wise, traumas. Again, traumas are something that we don't talk about much. So when we talk about all of that, that is when at Tattva Connect, we try to create a dialogue where we not just talk about what is the issue at hand, but at the same time, we also talk about the strategies to combat the other comorbidities that come with these issues. So Tattva Connect again is a very holistic platform that is not just focusing on one aspect of your well-being, but at the end of the day, our aim is to help you recognize the best version that you can be of yourself, and recognize that there are so many things in life that you can learn and unlearn. I mean, my definition of well-being, I keep on learning and unlearning it. Something works for me, something doesn't work for me. And just because a certain idea of self-love, self-care, well-being works for an influencer on Instagram does not mean it's going to work for me. So to individualize that for you, to help you find what works for you, what doesn't. That is why we at Tattva Connect talked about mental health advocacy, awareness, and application, which is also an extension of well-being and wellness.
Yeah, great cause and great efforts, Swapan. I'm glad you're doing that and you're balancing so many hats. Any others have any other questions? Okay. If there are probably no other questions, I think we can conclude today's ZIPINAR. Filjohn,
Uh,
you can go ahead.
yes, Srini, thank you so much. So again, Swapan, thank you so much for bringing that topic on the table and sharing very insightful um, ideas and knowledge that you have, and also that includes your experience on that field as well. So we really do appreciate, and we really thank you for your presence today, and for those who have joined our webinar as well, and those who are watching us live via Facebook and YouTube as well. So, but then again, we only have an hour for this session, and we are 8 minutes, like 8 minutes to go, so we can conclude the session for today. I'm afraid we do not have the second topic. We do apologize for that, but definitely we'll have interesting topics again, the same day, the same time next week, Wednesday, 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time. Please join us again. And also, we do have our live Youth Let Us Talk It webinar that happens every other Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. You can join the preparation sessions every Tuesday and Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time by registering at our website. That's letustalkit.com/youth. And for younger youth group, we have preparation sessions Tuesday and Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So hope you also support the younger generations doing this webinar and sharing the knowledge that they have to their age bracket. All right. So again, thank you so much, and hoping to see you again the same time Wednesday next week. All right. So be safe always, and thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Thank you so
you.